Welcome to XRP Pro Ledger, and today we need to have an honest, direct, and long overdue conversation about the difference between what is real, what is documented, and what is pure fantasy in the XRP narrative. Because David Schwartz just weighed in publicly on the conspiracy theories circulating in this community, and what he confirmed and what he explicitly debunked tells you everything you need to know about how to separate the legitimate thesis from the noise that is going to cost people money and credibility. Ripple is confirmed to be working with 30 central banks. That is documented, that is public. David Schwartz said it directly. What is not happening, what Schwartz explicitly called a conspiracy theory, is the narrative that those central banks are going to back their currencies with XRP. And while the community processes that debunking, something else just happened that deserves just as much attention. The Clarity Act just revealed 14 new ways for banks to profit from crypto, including lending money against crypto collateral, and that single legislative development is about to unlock a category of institutional and retail capital flow into this market that the current price of XRP simply cannot contain for long. And when 99% of crypto disappears under incoming regulation, the money sitting in meme coins and failed projects has to go somewhere. Let us talk about exactly where it is going. Let us start with the David Schwartz statement, because reading it precisely, not for what the conspiracy corners of the community wanted to say, but for what it actually says, is important for everyone who has a serious long-term commitment to the XRP investment thesis. Schwartz confirmed publicly that Ripple is working with 30 central banks and has relationships with central banks on every continent. Those relationships are real, they are documented, they have been public for years. What Schwartz explicitly called a conspiracy theory is the extension of that fact into the claim that those central banks are going to back their central bank digital currencies with XRP. And he is right to call it that. Central banks have been doing one thing consistently to position for the CBDC era: stockpiling gold. They are backing their digital currencies with gold, not with a third-party digital asset. XRP is not a reserve backing asset for CBDCs. XRP is the bridge currency that moves those CBDCs from country A to country B. That is a completely different and enormously valuable function, but it is not the same as currency backing, and conflating the two creates a fantasy thesis that the actual documented institutional deployment does not support. The distinction between XRP as a bridge currency and XRP as a CBDC backing asset is the most important conceptual clarification that long-term holders need to fully internalize, because the bridge currency function is actually a more powerful and more defensible value proposition than reserve backing would be, and yet the conspiracy narrative around reserve backing keeps undermining the credibility of the legitimate thesis in the eyes of serious institutional analysts. When country A wants to send value to country B using their respective CBDCs, those two digital currencies need a neutral intermediary to facilitate the exchange without either country needing to hold the other CBDC in reserve. XRP is that neutral intermediary. It steps in as the bridge asset, converts country A's CBDC to XRP instantaneously, moves the value across the border in 3 to 5 seconds, and converts from XRP to country B's CBDC on arrival. The G20 mCBDC bridge architecture specifically describes this function with a liquidity pool structure where XRP sits as the intermediary asset and digital asset exchanges act as the on and off ramps for both sides of the transaction. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is the documented operational architecture of the global CBDC interoperability system being built right now. The Clarity Act's 14 new bank powers for crypto is the legislative development that is going to generate more real-world capital flow into XRP than any government buyback conspiracy theory ever could. And it is happening through the normal mechanics of regulated financial innovation rather than through any secret plan. Banks being able to offer crypto custody, facilitate customer purchases and sales of digital assets, make loans backed by crypto collateral, and offer a full suite of crypto-linked financial products under their existing federal charters means that every bank customer in America, the hundreds of millions of people who were told about XRP by a friend or family member and said they would rather wait until their bank offered it, is about to have access to XRP through the institution they already trust with their money. The fees the banks will charge for these services are actually good for the ecosystem in a counterintuitive way, because they create a sustainable revenue model for banking sector crypto adoption that does not depend on speculative price appreciation, and that positions XRP as a mainstream bank-endorsed financial product rather than a fringe speculative asset. The utility run concept is the framework that separates the investors who truly understand XRP from the ones who are here for quick gains and will sell at the worst possible time, and it deserves a clear and honest explanation because it is being conflated with the supercycle narrative in ways that lead to incorrect expectations about how the price appreciation will unfold. A supercycle in crypto is a prolonged speculative bull market driven by retail FOMO, institutional inflows, and momentum buying that eventually exhausts itself and reverses in a crash. A utility run is something fundamentally different and something the crypto market has never experienced before. A utility run is a sustained period of price appreciation driven by the actual operational demand for an asset as a functional component of the global financial system. The kind of demand that does not reverse when retail sentiment turns negative because it is generated by operational necessity rather than investment psychology. When XRP is being used daily to settle cross-border transactions, to bridge CBDCs between countries, to process domestic instant payments, and to handle AI-to-AI value transfers, the demand for XRP is structural and recurring. That demand does not care about fear and greed indexes or ceasefire headlines. It compounds with every new use case that comes online, and it produces the kind of sustained multi-year price appreciation that makes previous crypto cycle gains look like noise. The two types of people in the XRP space observation is one of the most accurate and most important things that has been said about the current market psychology, those who are invested in XRP and those who actually understand it. The people complaining about the sideways price action right now are almost exclusively in the first category. They bought XRP hoping for a quick 10x, and they are watching the chart grind between $1.40 and $1.50 while the news cycle delivers one institutional validation after another, and they cannot connect those validations to a price movement that justifies their patience. The people who understand XRP are watching the same sideways chart and seeing something completely different. They are seeing the final phase of accumulation before a transition that is not driven by retail sentiment, but by the operational deployment of infrastructure that has been building for years. When you understand that Ripple was the first company to address cross-border payment inefficiencies using digital assets back in 2016, when no other payments network was doing that, you understand why there is no XRP killer. You cannot go back in time and rebuild a decade of institutional relationships, regulatory infrastructure, and payment rail deployment from scratch. The head start is structural and it is permanent. The no XRP alternative argument is the competitive mode analysis that most new participants in the XRP community have not fully absorbed, and it is the one that makes the most confident long-term price projections rational rather than speculative. Every time a new cryptocurrency appears and gets promoted as an XRP killer, the people making that claim are ignoring one fundamental reality. Ripple has been building the institutional rail system since 2016, has signed partnership agreements with banks across 6 continents, has navigated the most aggressive regulatory assault that any crypto company has ever faced and emerged with legal clarity intact, and has assembled a full-stack financial infrastructure through acquisitions of Hidden Road, G-Treasury, and Standard Custody that no competitor can replicate overnight. The XRP ledger was purpose-built for global institutional settlement from its architecture up. ISO 20022 compatibility was not retrofitted, it was designed in from day one. The money transmitter license network across the United States is not something a new blockchain can acquire in a year. The central bank relationships confirmed by Schwartz are not something that can be copied by a project that launched last month. XRP does not have competition, it has imitators. And imitators with no institutional rail system, no regulatory history, and no central bank relationships are not competition. The RLUSD stablecoin competitive picture is where the XRP thesis extends most directly into the stablecoin market that is currently dominated by USDT and USDC, and the structural advantages that RLUSD has over both are going to become increasingly obvious as regulatory clarity arrives. USDC is a good stablecoin technically, but its economics are designed to funnel the majority of yield generated by reserve assets into Coinbase's pocket rather than into the broader ecosystem. USDT cannot pass an independent audit, a fact that has been documented for years and that represents an existential regulatory risk as institutional compliance requirements tighten. RLUSD is fully backed, fully regulated, built natively on the XRP ledger, designed for the institutional compliance environment that incoming regulation requires, and backed by a company that has already navigated a years-long SEC enforcement action and emerged with the most comprehensive regulatory track record of any stablecoin issuer in the world. The $33 trillion in annual stablecoin volume that the market generated in 2025 proves that demand for regulated dollar-denominated digital assets is massive and real. RLUSD is positioned to capture an increasing share of that volume as USDT's audit issues become regulatory liabilities and USDC's Coinbase economics become a competitive disadvantage. The meme, coin capital rotation story is the near-term catalyst that most XRP analysts are underweighting because it feels speculative, but the mechanics of it are actually straightforward and the scale of the capital involved is significant. Paul Barron's research comparing the current crypto market to the dot-com era is directly relevant here. In the dot-com era, 90% of internet companies failed, but the capital that had been tied up in the failures did not disappear from the tech sector. It rotated into the survivors and amplified their valuations dramatically. The same pattern is going to play out in crypto when Clarity Act enforcement begins creating accountability for meme coin issuers and rug pull operators. The money sitting in meme coins right now is not going to leave crypto entirely. The people holding it came into this space looking for returns, and they are going to continue looking for returns. When the regulatory environment makes meme coins too risky to hold, that capital rotation has to go somewhere. And it is going to flow toward the utility-driven assets that have the regulatory clarity, institutional relationships, and real-world deployment track record to justify a long-term allocation. XRP, XDC, XLM, Quant, Algo, IOTA, HBAR, and Flare are the assets that meet that standard. XRP is the largest and most institutionally validated among them, which means it captures the largest share of the rotation. The complete picture today is one that should give every serious XRP holder both clarity about what is real and confidence about what is coming. David Schwartz confirmed Ripple's 30 central bank relationships as documented fact while correctly debunking the reserve backing conspiracy theory that was obscuring the legitimate bridge currency thesis. The Clarity Act's 14 new bank powers are going to onboard hundreds of millions of bank customers into XRP through the institutions they already trust. The utility run that is coming is not a super cycle, it is something the crypto market has never seen before, driven by operational demand that compounds with every new deployment. RLUSD is positioned to surpass both USDT and USDT as regulatory clarity tightens around stablecoin compliance. Meme coin capital rotation under incoming regulation will flow toward utility-driven assets with XRP capturing the largest share. And the people who understand what they are holding right now, not just invested in it, but genuinely understanding it, are the ones who are going to be positioned for the kind of wealth creation that comes when a decade of infrastructure building finally meets the moment where that infrastructure becomes the operational backbone of the global financial system. Stay patient, stay positioned, and understand what you are holding. If this analysis changed how you're thinking about XRP, hit like and subscribe. I drop deep dive breakdowns like this twice a day to keep you ahead of the market.